Hi everyone. Today our Group 6, is presenting Don Quixote in The Chariot of Death by Andre Masson, painted in 1935. The order of speaking is me, Hannah Calora, followed by Samuel Crumble, Marley Clark, Sarah Coffin, and finally Stacy De Silva. We chose this artwork because its bold colors, distorted figures, and surreal style immediately caught our attention, and it made us want to understand the story behind it. Again, I'm Hannah Calora. I'm a 20-year-old communications major at Florida Atlantic University, and that's that. The two elements I focused on are texture and pattern. Even though this painting is flat, my song creates texture by layering color and using expressive brushstrokes. Um, the sandy yellow background looks rough and dry, and it looks almost like a desert, while the flowing blue and green shapes in the background feel much softer and smoother. And that contrast makes the painting feel more alive and adds more depth to the scene, and it almost makes it look 3D. Um, Masson also uses pattern by repeating curved lines, sharp angles, and twisted shapes throughout the painting. You can see these repeated forms in the horse's legs, the skeleton, and the abstract figure on the right, which I think is a jester. I'm not really sure. The repeated warm colors, especially the yellows, browns, and reds, help connect all of these different figures while creating a sense of movement and chaos. I personally connected this painting because I like the artwork, but it made me realize like life isn't always organized or easy, and there are times where I felt overwhelmed by school and responsibilities. Um, but looking back on those experiences helped me grow, and this painting reminds me that even when things seem chaotic, they can still come together in a very meaningful manner. And that's one of the reasons why this artwork stood out to me and why I enjoyed analyzing it.
Hello, my name is Samuel Crumble, and I'm a history major and freshman here at FAU. The artwork our group chose was André Masson's Don Quixote and the Chariot of Death. And the formal element I chose to discuss are shape and value. Now, André Masson uses irregular, distorted, and angular shapes throughout the artwork. Now, the figures in the chariot are not shown realistically. Instead, their fragmented shapes create movement and make the scene feel chaotic, tense, and almost dreamlike. Now, these unusual shapes also reflect the confusion and dangers of the moment. Now, value is shown through the contrast between light and dark areas. The darker values create a threatening mood and emphasize the figure of death, while the lighter areas help important figures and actions stand out. This contrast guides the viewer's attention across the composition. Now, coming from a history major, this artwork connects to my field because art can reveal the beliefs, fears, and conflicts of a particular time. Studying images like this helps historians understand how people interpret war, death, heroism in today's society.
Hi everyone, my name is Marley Clark and I'm a marketing major in my first year at Florida Atlantic University. And I'll be discussing the element of light in Pablo Picasso's Don Quixote and the Chariot of Death. One of the first things I noticed is how Picasso uses light to draw our attention to the main action. The bright yellow and cream color areas surrounding Don Quixote and his horse make them stand out from the darker blues, blacks, and browns in the background. Instead of using realistic lighting, Picasso creates the feeling of light through bold color contrasts. This gives the painting an energetic, almost dreamlike atmosphere and makes the scene feel dramatic and full of movement. The light also helps create a sense of emotion. The glowing colors around the central figure suggest intensity and make the conflict between Don Quixote and the Chariot of Death feel even more powerful. As a marketing student, this reminds me that light can be used to guide attention and communicate emotion, even in abstract or symbolic artwork.
Hi everybody, my name is Sarah Coffin and I'm a communications major at FAU this year. So today I'm going to be talking about Andre Masson's Don Quixote and the Chariot of Death, but more importantly, the color and the unity of the piece. So this painting is a surrealist painting made with oil on canvas. It's not a medium-sized painting, I'd say, but it uses a lot of surrealism to emphasize emotion, symbolism, and the unconscious mind. However, one of the most striking elements about this painting is going to be color. The artist uses a lot of warm reds, oranges, and yellows in the painting, but also includes some cooler greens, blues, and even a little bit of purple. The use of expressive colors emphasizes the dramatic conflict between Don Quixote and the Chariot of Death, but it also creates a sense of movement, tension, and emotional intensity throughout the painting. The contrasting color palette draws the viewer's eyes across the composition while reinforcing the painting's dreamlike and symbolic atmosphere. As a communications major, I really appreciate how color functions as a visual language. Just as Masson uses color to influence the viewer's emotions and direct attention, communication majors use color intentionally in branding, advertising, social media, anything. So I really admire that. Although the painting does appear chaotic at first, there is a lot of unity in the painting as well. There's the repetition of the curved forms and lines like around the top of the painting, and there's a lot of overlapping figures and a pretty consistent color palette. The sweeping lines connect the fragmented shapes, leading the viewer's eye across the entire composition and making every element feel like a part of one story. Rather than existing as separate images, all of the figures work together to create a pretty unified narrative. The principle of unity also relates pretty closely to my study of communications. Effective communication depends on every single design element, but I personally think that if you're advertisement, if your post isn't unified, it's gonna look a mess and nobody's gonna look at it. So I really do appreciate the unity of this painting specifically because I feel like the message he's trying to convey is kind of messy at first, but he does a really good job at making it look unified.
Hi, my name is Stacy De Silva. I'm a biological science major and I'm also a freshman. Today I'm going to be talking about the line quality of the Don Quixote and the Chariot of Death. Within this painting, I see sharp curved lines that represent the figures of this painting. I also see thick lines that represent the actions and movements of these figures, and thin lines that represent the specific details of the painting, such as the blue and yellow hues surrounding the figures. And I believe these blue and yellow hues represent intense power and force that they're using against the skeleton figure, which I believe represents death. As a biology major, I believe that I will be seeing a lot of life and death situations, unfortunately. And in the medical field, I have to learn to have compassion towards the way people feel and also demonstrate compassion to families and friends and patients.